The Pentagon was built to protect secrets, but some secrets refused to stay buried. When a young soldier died under suspicious circumstances, the official report called it a tragic accident. But one woman refused to believe that. Captain Elise Morgan, a decorated officer with everything to lose, discovered a single note that would unravel the most powerful cover-up in military history. What began as quiet doubt soon became open rebellion against lies written by those sworn to defend the truth. This story isn't about war. It's about conscience. It's about what happens when loyalty collides with morality, and when silence becomes more dangerous than the truth itself. Inside those walls of command and authority, a single voice will rise, one that can't be silenced anymore. If you believe that courage still matters, subscribe now and stay until the end. Because what Captain Morgan exposes inside the Pentagon will shake the foundation of power itself and change forever what duty really means. The rain fell in thin, precise lines, tapping the metal of the folded flag as if counting every heartbeat that had stopped too soon. Captain Elise Morgan stood in the second row, her back straight, eyes locked on the casket draped in red, white, and blue. Around her, silence pressed like armor. Generals whispered condolences, cameras clicked, and yet, beneath all the ceremony, something felt rehearsed, too perfect, too empty. Elise had attended many funerals, but never one that felt this staged. When the Secretary of Defense, Robert Harlow, stepped forward, the air seemed to harden. His voice was smooth, heavy with false grief. "Private Lewis Carter died a hero," he declared, pausing just long enough for applause that never came. Elise caught a twitch in his jaw, a flicker that betrayed discomfort. The widow clutched the flag, trembling, but no tears fell. Elise's instincts screamed, this wasn't mourning. It was concealment dressed as honor. After the ceremony, Elise approached the widow. "Ma'am, if you ever need anything." But the woman only whispered. They said not to talk. Then she turned away, leaving Elise frozen. A gust of wind swept through the field, lifting the edges of the flag as if the dead were trying to speak. Elise's pulse quickened. Something inside her refused to let go of that sentence. They said not to talk. Hours later, inside her dim apartment, Elise unpinned her medals and stared at them on the table. The silence of the city pressed against the windows. When she hung her jacket, a folded envelope slipped out from the inner pocket, one she hadn't noticed before. Her name was written in black ink, the letters rushed and uneven. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 7 words. "He didn't die in combat. Find out." Her breath caught. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the ink slightly smeared as if written in haste. Who could have placed it there? The idea that someone had touched her uniform without her noticing sent a chill down her spine. She checked her locks twice, drew the blinds, and read the note again. The message wasn't a suggestion, it was a command, the kind that rewrites a person's destiny. The next morning, Elise returned to headquarters. Soldiers moved briskly through the corridors, unaware of the storm quietly forming within her. Every file she reviewed about Private Carter said the same thing: killed in action, mission classified, but the timeline was off by 2 days. Small, almost invisible discrepancies, the kind bureaucracies rely on no one to notice. Yet to Elise, they screamed deception. In the cafeteria, she overheard 2 officers whispering about the press leak and the secretary's damage control. When she walked by, they fell silent, pretending to discuss sports. Her fingers tightened around her coffee cup. Paranoia had a taste now, metallic and bitter. She knew then that the envelope wasn't an accident. Someone wanted her to uncover what others were dying to keep buried. That night, she visited the records room after hours. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the space. Rows of classified boxes stood like tombstones. She located Carter's file, but when she pulled it out, a faint outline showed where pages had been removed. She reached for the sign-out log. The last signature made her heart drop. R. Harlow. The secretary himself had handled the file days before the funeral. Elise backed away slowly, pulse hammering. A voice echoed from the hallway. "Captain Morgan? You're not authorized here." She turned to see Colonel Keller, his expression unreadable. "Just reviewing some archives, sir." "At midnight?" he asked, stepping closer. For a moment, she thought he would confiscate the folder. Instead, he smiled faintly. "Be careful what ghost you chase, Captain. Some don't want to be found. She left the records room shaken, clutching the empty file like a confession. Outside, thunder cracked over Washington, lightning flashing against the Pentagon's facade. She knew she had just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Whatever this cover-up was, it went higher than anyone dared admit, and now she was part of it. Morning briefings came and went, but Elise heard none of them. Her mind replayed the widow's whisper, the envelope, the missing pages. Every corridor of the Pentagon now felt different, colder, as if the walls themselves were listening. When she passed portraits of former secretaries, she wondered how many secrets those faces had hidden. Beneath her composed exterior, fear and duty wrestled for control. She began her search quietly. Cross-checking Carter's deployment logs, she noticed the listed coordinates didn't exist on official maps. Her stomach tightened. When she tried to access the restricted server that stored mission data, the screen flashed red, access denied. Seconds later, an automated email arrived from Defense Oversight, unauthorized query detected. The warning was clear. Someone was watching her every move. That afternoon, in the elevator, two officers spoke softly behind her. The secretary's briefing was moved again. He doesn't want Carter's name mentioned. The doors slid open before they noticed Elise standing there. Their faces went pale. She stepped out, leaving them stunned. But inside, her pulse thundered. The cover-up wasn't rumor. It was policy. Later, during a staff meeting, Secretary Harlow entered flanked by security. His presence silenced the room. He scanned the table until his eyes landed on Elise. "Captain Morgan," he said evenly, "perhaps you can explain why your clearance log shows repeated access attempts to a classified operation?" All heads turned. Heat flushed her neck. "Sir, I was verifying a discrepancy, he interrupted with a faint smile. "Our records are flawless. Maybe you should focus on your duties, not ghosts." Laughter followed. Humiliation burned, but resolve burned hotter. That night, unable to sleep, Elise drove to the veterans' canteen outside the base, a dim bar where stories were currency. There she met Sergeant Daniel Brooks, gray-haired and heavy-eyed, nursing black coffee. When she mentioned Carter's name, his expression cracked. "You're still digging that grave?" he muttered. She leaned in. "I think someone already dug it for him." His sigh trembled. "He wasn't killed in combat. Friendly fire during a test op. They ordered me to sign the false report." His voice broke. "Harlow said it was for the greater good." Elise stared, stunned. The truth had weight. It pressed her lungs. "Why tell me now?" she asked. Brooks looked toward the rain-smeared window. "Because I can't keep pretending the boy died a hero when I saw what really happened." He slid a small flash drive across the table. "Proof. But be careful. They monitor everyone." Before she could respond, he left, his shoulders heavy, like a man walking back into guilt. Returning to her car, Elise's phone buzzed with an unknown message. "Stop digging, Captain." No sender, no trace. Her breath quickened. She checked the mirror. A dark SUV idled 2 cars back. When she turned the ignition, its headlights flared on too. The road home became a gauntlet of shadows and tail lights, her heartbeat sinking with the wipers. Whatever she had stumbled into was no longer a secret. It was a warning. By dawn, exhaustion replaced fear. She locked the flash drive in her drawer and looked at her reflection, a soldier divided between conscience and command. In the corridor, whispers followed her, real or imagined. She couldn't tell. Somewhere deep inside the Pentagon, the truth waited, sealed behind codes and ranks. And Elise, now marked by suspicion, understood one thing. Silence was safer, but silence was complicity. Elise spent the next day torn between fear and determination. Every sound in her office made her flinch. Every passing shadow seemed to linger too long. She wanted to hand the flash drive over to military police, but couldn't trust anyone. That night, she met Sergeant Brooks again, this time in an abandoned parking lot near Arlington Cemetery. The air was heavy, filled with the low hum of distant traffic. "You shouldn't have contacted me again," he warned, glancing around. "They're watching both of us." She stepped closer. "Then let's make it worth their effort." Brooks handed her another drive, wrapped in a folded note. "This one they'll kill for," he said quietly. "It's encrypted, hidden within a system Harlow's people think no one can access." He hesitated, voice trembling. "I was part of it, Elise. I signed the orders. I can't die with that." Before she could reply, he added, "If I disappear, show them this." The words echoed like a verdict. His eyes held both apology and resolve, a man confessing to save his soul. The following morning, Brooks was found dead in what reports called a domestic gas leak. Elise read the message twice, her hands trembling. Her chest felt hollow. It wasn't an accident, it was a cleanup. The same machinery that silenced Carter had now silenced Brooks. Yet, instead of fear, anger settled over her like armor. She inserted the drive, expecting answers. Instead, her screen displayed an empty folder titled Nemesis. Empty, except for one faint string of code. She recognized it instantly, a disguised access key. She began tracing it through internal servers, bypassing restrictions she wasn't cleared to touch. Each click deepened her sense of trespass. Finally, a connection flashed green. Pentagon Internal Archive Node 7. Her heart pounded. But before she could open the file, her monitor went black. Seconds later, a system alert. Unauthorized access detected. User suspended pending investigation. The message came signed, Office of the Secretary of Defense. 2 hours later, she was summoned by Colonel Keller. His office was immaculate, windows overlooking the Capitol. Captain Morgan, he began calmly. You're being placed on administrative leave for security violations. Elise didn't flinch. Did Harlow order this? He smiled faintly. You should focus on resting, not asking dangerous questions. When she refused to hand over her access card, he leaned in. You're good, Captain. Don't ruin yourself chasing ghosts. His tone carried both warning and regret, a soldier's loyalty at war with his conscience. Back home, Elise paced in silence. The suspension meant she'd lost her clearance, but not her conviction. She reopened the drive offline, studying the code line again. It was a location, not digital, but physical. A storage room deep within the Pentagon's West Wing, restricted to upper-level staff. She realized Brooks hadn't given her data. He'd given her directions. Her pulse quickened. The truth wasn't in the system. It was in a room. That night, disguised in civilian clothes, Elise entered through a maintenance corridor she once used during drills. The halls were empty except for cameras, their red lights blinking like watchful eyes. She moved carefully, heart hammering, each footstep echoing her defiance. Inside the storage room, rows of metal cabinets lined the walls. One drawer was marked Nemesis, declassified. She opened it. Inside, sealed in a plastic envelope, were documents stamped top secret, and a photograph of Carter, alive, standing beside Harlow. The realization hit like a blow. The death certificate was a fabrication. Carter's death had been staged, but why? She barely had time to think. From the hallway came the faint sound of boots. Someone else was there. She grabbed the envelope, shut off the light, and slipped through a side exit as Keller's voice echoed, distant but distinct. Morgan, stop. The chase had begun, and this time, there would be no going back. The next morning, Elise hid the classified envelope beneath her uniform jacket and drove to a secure library near the Defense Archives. Her hands trembled as she spread the documents across the table. Operation Nemesis. That name appeared again and again, stamped on each report like a ghost refusing to fade. Each page detailed weapon tests, failed extractions, and one line repeated through multiple orders: suppress all evidence. At the bottom of every page, the same signature glared back at her: Robert Harlow, Secretary of Defense. Her chest tightened. Brooks had been right. The operation was never about the enemy abroad. It was about hiding a mistake at home. As she scanned deeper, a small drive fell from between the folders. She hesitated, inserted it, and a single audio file loaded. Nemesis_protocol_04. The voice that filled her headphones was unmistakable. No one needs to know. Not the press, not his family. The narrative will hold if everyone stays quiet. Harlow's tone was steady, almost bored, the calm of a man accustomed to controlling truth itself. For a long moment, Elise just sat there, numb. The confirmation she'd sought for days was now a weight crushing her breath. Carter hadn't died in combat. He'd been executed to protect a failed weapons test, and then erased. The fury that followed wasn't explosive, it was surgical. She backed up the data, encrypted copies to cloud servers, and deleted traces of her access. Then she whispered, "You'll answer for this." The resolve in her voice surprised even her. But the system struck back faster than she imagined. As she exited the building, Two black SUVs blocked her path. Keller stepped out first, expression grave. "Captain Morgan, you're under investigation for espionage." She didn't resist, not yet. "You're making a mistake, Colonel." He sighed. "You already did." They seized her ID, confiscated her car, but missed one thing: the original flash drive hidden inside her boot. Her last insurance. Detained for hours in a gray interrogation room, Elise faced relentless questioning. They accused her of breaching national security, of falsifying data, of endangering institutional stability. Every word they spoke only confirmed her fear. Truth was the real enemy here. When Harlow finally entered, the room fell silent. "You could have been promoted," he said softly. "You could have been safe." Elise met his gaze. So could Private Carter. The flicker of surprise in his eyes was brief, but it was enough. The predator had felt pain. By nightfall, she was released under temporary suspension pending review. In truth, they wanted to monitor her, not protect her. Back in her apartment, she retrieved the hidden drive and replayed the audio. Harlow's voice again, steady as judgment. She realized the only way to break this was in public, where even he couldn't bury the story. And the perfect stage was coming. The annual defense conference, streamed worldwide. Elise reached out to a single contact in cybersecurity, Lieutenant Parker, a quiet analyst who once owed her his career. "Can you override the main projection feed?" she asked. Silence, then, "For you?" "Once." They worked through the night, syncing the file to activate during Harlow's keynote address. One slip, and she'd be imprisoned forever. But one success, and the world would see the truth. "It's not just Carter," Parker whispered before signing off. "There are others." The revelation only sharpened her resolve. Hours before the conference, Elise stood before her mirror, fastening her medals one last time. They no longer felt like honors. They were weights, symbols of everything she'd lost to obedience. She looked herself in the eye and whispered, "No more silence." Outside, Washington glimmered under dawn's pale light. Somewhere across the city, the secretary rehearsed his speech, unaware that before the day ended, his empire of silence would collapse. The auditorium of the Pentagon buzzed with restless energy. Cameras lined the aisles, journalists whispered predictions, and hundreds of uniformed officers filled the seats. At the center of the stage stood a polished podium and a vast screen displaying the emblem of the Department of Defense. Behind the curtains, Secretary Robert Harlow straightened his tie, his reflection calm, practiced. He was about to deliver his annual speech on integrity and security. The irony made Elise's stomach twist as she waited backstage, her badge forged, her pulse steady only in appearance. When the lights dimmed and Harlow stepped to the microphone, the crowd rose in applause. "Today," he began, "we celebrate the guardians of truth, those who keep our nation safe, no matter the cost." His words echoed, smooth and hollow. Elise watched from the control booth as Parker's encrypted sequence loaded silently in the background. A small window blinked, playback armed. Awaiting trigger, she whispered, "Showtime," and pressed enter. The giant screen flickered. For a second, it looked like a glitch, static, then silence. Harlow paused mid-sentence, confusion shadowing his face. The audience murmured. Then his own voice filled the hall, recorded days earlier. "No one needs to know. Not the press, not his family. The narrative will hold if everyone stays quiet." Gasps rippled through the room. Harlow froze. His eyes darted toward the tech booth, then the audience, where cameras now pointed straight at him. "Cut the feed," he barked, but the system refused to obey. Parker's override held strong. The footage continued, photos of Private Carter, official documents, timestamps, signatures, all bearing Harlow's name. Elise stepped into the light, standing by the side aisle. Every pair of eyes turned to her. "This is the truth you buried," she said, her voice clear, unshaking. "He didn't die in combat. You killed the story, not the man." The air felt electrified, charged with disbelief and awakening. Security guards moved in, but hesitation flickered in their faces. Harlow slammed his hand on the podium. "You think you can destroy me with lies?" His voice cracked for the first time. Elise held up the drive. "No, with your own words." She played the last part of the recording, Harlow ordering the cover-up personally. The sound of his voice condemning himself filled the hall like thunder. No one moved. Even the guards lowered their hands. In that silence, Power shifted, from the office to the truth. Reporters surged forward, flashes igniting like gunfire. The once composed secretary stumbled, his practiced confidence collapsing under the weight of exposure. Elise stood still, her eyes never leaving his. She felt no triumph, only release, the kind that comes when fear finally runs out. For the first time, she understood what justice looked like. Not loud, but undeniable. The crowd's whispers grew into an unstoppable wave. The truth had become louder than any command. When the lights rose, Harlow was escorted from the stage, his face drained of color. As he passed Elise, he stopped just long enough to whisper, "You think it ends here?" She met his gaze. "No, it begins here." The cameras caught every word. That line would echo through news reports for weeks. A soldier's defiance turned into a nation's reckoning. The applause that followed wasn't celebration. It was absolution. Outside, the early evening light cut through the clouds. Elise stepped into the open air, exhausted but unbroken. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not alarms of danger, but signals of change. She exhaled, feeling the weight of silence lift. Somewhere, Parker was erasing their digital tracks. Somewhere else, families of soldiers watched the broadcast with tears and vindication. For the first time in years, the Pentagon felt human again. The night sky over Washington flickered with police lights. Reporters swarmed the Pentagon steps, their voices colliding in a storm of questions. Inside, chaos hummed through the corridors once ruled by silence. Elise walked past officers and aides who avoided her eyes, unsure whether to salute or stare. The same halls that had watched her humiliation now echoed with her footsteps, calm, measured, victorious without arrogance. Justice had arrived, not with applause, but with consequence. In the secure wing, Secretary Harlow sat in custody, wrists bound, expression vacant. Cameras pressed against the glass, feeding the nation's hunger for accountability. For decades, he had shaped narratives with words. Tonight, those same words destroyed him. When Elise entered, he looked up, bitterness thinly masking fear. "You'll drown in what you've started," he muttered. She replied softly, "No, Mr. Secretary. I finally learned to breathe." Then she turned away, leaving him to the silence he once commanded. Outside the Pentagon, crowds gathered spontaneously, veterans, families, civilians. They weren't cheering, they were remembering. Candles flickered beside photos of soldiers once labeled as classified losses. Private Carter's picture stood among them, his mother holding the flag she'd been given under false pretense. Elise approached quietly, placing the original report, now unsealed, beside the photo. "He's finally home," she whispered. The woman simply nodded, tears glimmering like stars. Days passed, and investigations spread through every branch of defense. Elise testified before Congress, her calm voice cutting through political theater. She refused personal credit, naming instead the fallen and those silenced trying to speak. Her honesty disarmed even the cynics. One senator murmured, "Courage isn't loud, is it?" Elise smiled faintly. "No, sir. It just doesn't shut up." The line trended across the country within hours, the anthem of a generation tired of quiet obedience. In the weeks that followed, Keller resigned, confessing his role in suppressing evidence. Parker was reassigned to cybersecurity reform, turning the leak that could have ended his career into a crusade for transparency. Elise declined promotion, requesting instead to lead a task force investigating ethical violations within classified programs. "The system doesn't fix itself," she told the committee. "It needs people willing to lose for the truth." Her voice carried neither pride nor anger, only purpose. One morning, standing at Arlington, Elise visited the real Carter's grave, now bearing his true date of death. The sunrise painted the marble in gold. She closed her eyes and felt a quiet peace, not triumph, but closure. "We didn't win," she said softly. "We remembered." Behind her, a new recruit placed fresh flowers, unaware that his silent gesture was the continuation of her fight. History, Elise realized, was written not by orders, but by conscience. As months turned into years, stories surfaced of other cover-ups dismantled by the precedent she had set. Her name appeared in textbooks, her face in murals inside military academies. Yet she kept no trophies, no interviews, no memoir. When asked why she stayed silent about her legacy, she simply said, because the truth doesn't belong to one person. And that humility became her lasting command. The final image, Elise walking through the Pentagon courtyard at dawn, the same place where fear once ruled her. The wind carries distant echoes of applause mixed with birdsong. She stops, looks up at the flag rising anew, and whispers, "For all of them." Her reflection merges with the fluttering fabric, a soldier no longer hidden in shadows, but standing where truth finally had a voice. And as the screen fades, words appear. Some wars aren't fought with weapons, but with courage that refuses silence. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who believes integrity still matters. Leave a comment about what truth means to you. Your support keeps these stories alive, and more revelations like this are on the way. Don't miss our next powerful story from the shadows of the Pentagon.